Okay, so these are your polymer clay choices that I have put in your kit. If you ended up providing your own clay, you're welcome to use those other ones, but at least for this first assignment and for what we're going to be doing, these should be plenty, and it'll give you a lot of options. So we have white and black, which are like plain neutral colors, and then we also have this little off-white piece, and this is your clay conditioner if any of your pieces are too hard to work with to start off. Then we also have our red and pink or magenta, we have yellow, and then we have our blue and cyan. So I've already conditioned this yellow clay, and as you can see when I squish the bag, it squishes pretty easily, but some of these other colors might not be quite so ready to work with. Now, I'm going to start off with, I think, this red. So I'm just going to take it out. I've already wiped down my station so that it's all clean and ready to go. Got my pink. Here's my red. I have them all in these separate little baggies so that they don't mess up their color too much and mix with each other. So now that I've got these out, actually I can see that this red is actually pretty pliable. There's a little bit of breakage, but once I work this around in my hands, roll it. This should really soften it up, and you can already see how much more pliable it is. And this is actually pretty good to go. So I'm going to roll this up back into a little ball and put it back in my warm color bag because I know that this one's fine. You can already see the color on my hands. I just have a little alcohol or bleach wipe off to the side for cleaning off in between in my demos. So if you have anything like a Clorox wipe or even a baby wipe, that'll also work just fine. I'm going to dry off my hands. The pink is a little bit less pliable. When I tried to bend it, it just broke. So what I'm going to do now is take my nifty little rolling pin that looks kind of like a straw, and I'm going to flatten this out. And I'm going to take a little piece of my conditioner, just a teeny tiny little piece. It does not have to be very big at all. I'm going to take, so I started off with this much, and I don't need this much. I'm going to take and rip that in half. Now the clay conditioner is super soft and pliable, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. So I'm going to stick that right in the middle of my pink. I flattened it out just a bit, and I'm going to fold over these other two sides. And I'm moving it just so I can always be pushing away from myself. So now I am rolling, flattening it out. Again, I'm going to flip it into thirds. So this is conditioning your clay, and it's using the actual clay conditioner to do it. You can kind of condition the clay with just your hands by moving it around and working with it and warming it up, but you don't need the conditioner, but this is a good way to make it nice and soft and pliable, workable, and consistent. So, fun fact, this process that I'm doing right here, where I'm flattening it and folding it in thirds with the conditioner in the middle, is very similar to a process in baking called laminating. And it's how you get things like croissants and lobster tails and other super flaky buttery pastries. So now you can look at this and see how floppy and wiggly it is. This pink has now been conditioned. It has been mixed with just enough of that clay conditioner that I can put it back in my bag and know that it's ready for use. So once again, I'm just taking my little wipe that's off to the side, cleaning off my rolling pin, cleaning off my surface. Even if your surface looks clean, wipe it down, because there might be a thin film. Wiping off my hands. Okay. So that is conditioning your clay. The next thing I'm going to show you is just mixing some of your clay, because you have to mix quite a few combinations this week. So I'm going to keep my pink and my red, or my magenta and my red, and then I'm going to grab my yellow here. It's a little bit stuck in my bag since I was kind of a ding-dong and squeezed it around in there. So on your assignment, I'm asking you to mix a piece that's the size of a grain of rice. And I said that you could use a paper clip, a toothpick, your fingernail, whatever you need. You just need a very, very tiny piece. So, like, this is a perfectly acceptable grain of rice sized piece. And I'm going to take a piece that's the same size from my pink, more or less. There we go. And there's pink and yellow. And I'm going to take these two, and I'm just going to mash them up. And all I need to do is mash them between my fingers. I can squeeze them, I can pull them apart. As you're rolling and mixing, you might notice a kind of marbled effect. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So you might see before they start actually mixing together that they just kind of sit next to each other. But as you mix them more and more, that color will come together. If you're struggling to do it with your fingers, especially if it's just like too small of a piece, you can use your rolling pin like I am to flatten it out. Just again, make sure you're on a clean, smooth surface, because otherwise this is a pain in the booty to deal with. So here I'm just gonna keep rolling it like so. And now this color is pretty consistent. Between pink and yellow, we have this orange. So now, I'm also going to do a little bit with the red and the yellow, because we want to compare how these different primary color sets interact and work with each other. So I have my two little grains of rice. If you've ever seen mouse poop, it's also about the same size as mouse poop, but that's a less pleasant thing to think about than rice. So again, I just have these two little pieces, and I'm just going to start squishing them together between my fingers. I'm kind of ripping them up, mixing them around, smooshing them. This one I'm not quite so concerned about picking up the previous color, just because I know it's going to be a little bit darker, because we went from magenta to red. So I didn't clean up between these two. Now, this red was really strong, and I might have even been a little bit short on the yellow, so I'm going to grab just a teeny tiny touch more yellow. Not a whole lot, but if I compare these two side by side, there's not a whole lot of difference in the color, so I really want to be able to see that difference. Usually when you're mixing these on your own, you will need slightly different proportions than 50-50. But if you start with 50-50 and then move from there, it's easier to see. So we're stretching this, rolling it, fold it in half, rolling it. Yeah. So here's a little bit better. So now I can talk about how these two are different and compare them. So this orange, if you remember, was the magenta and yellow, and this orange-ish one is the red and yellow. So if I were to compare these, this one is much more intensely colored than this one. So the one that's made with magenta is a little bit more muted. It almost looks like the color of salmon. Whereas the one on the right, the red one, looks kind of like the color of blood. So if I were putting these in my section 1, they would go in this magenta and yellow and the red and yellow section. And then in my section 2, when I'm talking about how they compare with each other, that's how I would describe it. Like, this one looks more like salmon and this one looks more like blood. The next piece of it is where you're mixing all three primaries together. So you'll save these to mix later. And that's it for starters.